This is Numbers 15 in the MacArthur Study Bible. A little refresher of 14. So the spies gave their report, and then the people chose to not go into Egypt. And then Joshua and Caleb tried to persuade them to go into the land. The Lord will give it to them. But no, they wanted to throw stones at them. And then the Lord says that they're not going to get to go in. And at first the Lord was going to wipe them out and just start again with Moses, and then Moses reminds the Lord, you brought them out of Egypt, but what are the nations going to say if you're not able to bring them into the promised land? So pardon this iniquity. All right. But they're not going to get to go into the land. But Joshua and Caleb will get to go in. Yep. And the men that are 20 years and older or whatever, all of those people, except for Joshua and Caleb, they're all going to die in the wilderness. And there you go. And the other 10 spies, they died. And Moses tells the children of Israel this. They are mourning, and then they try to go in. But Moses is like, hey, why do you transgress the command of the Lord? Don't go up. He's not with you. But they don't listen, and they go up, and they get creamed. And then you get into 15. And 15 has laws. So pretty interesting that, right after 14 you get some laws. Alright, well, the first set of laws are the laws of grain and drink offerings. And this is the first 21 verses. Alright, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you have come up into the land you are about to inhabit, which I am giving to you, and you make an offering by fire to the Lord, a burnt offering of sacrifice to fulfill a vow, or as a freewill offering, or in your appointed feasts, to make a sweet aroma to the Lord from the herd or the flock, then he who presents his offspring to the Lord shall bring a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil and 1/4 of a hin of wine as a drink offering. You shall prepare the burnt offering or the sacrifice for each lamb. Or for a ram you shall prepare as a grain offering for 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil, and as a drink offering you shall offer 1/3 of a hin of wine as a sweet aroma to the Lord. And when you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering, or as a sacrifice to fulfill a vow, or as a peace offering to the Lord, then shall be offered with the young bull a grain of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with a half hin of oil, and you shall bring as a drink offering half the hin of wine as an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. And thus it shall be done for each young bull, for each ram, or for each lamb or young goat. According to the number that you prepare, so you shall do with everyone according to their number. And all who are native born shall do these things in this manner, in presenting an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. And if a stranger dwells with you, or whoever is among you throughout your generations, and would present an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord, just as you do, so shall he do. One ordinance shall be for you of the assembly, and for the stranger who dwells with you, an ordinance forever throughout your generations, as you are, so shall the stranger be before the Lord. one law and one custom shall be before you, and for the stranger who dwells with you. Again, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you come into the land to which I bring you, then it will be, when you eat of the bread of the land, that you shall offer up a heave offering to the Lord. And you shall offer up a cake of the first of your ground meal as a heave offering of the threshing floor, so shall you offer it up. And of the first of your ground meal you shall give to the Lord a heave offering throughout your generations. Okay. So here's pretty much a summary of this whole chapter, and there's just some more laws in the rest of the chapter. But basically, even though the Israelites had rebelled against the Lord and were under his judgment, the Lord still planned to give the land of Canaan to them, and these laws assumed Israel's entrance into the land, even though, of course, that would happen with the next generation. So I guess maybe these laws, right in the middle of this narrative, I guess showing that, yeah, they're still going to get to go into the land, just not this generation. So God is not done with Israel. Alright, so the first 16 verses, the law of the grain offering recorded, it differs from that given in Leviticus 2. So the grain offerings in Leviticus, they were offered separately as a gift to the Lord. Here, for the first time, grain and drink offerings were allowed to be offered along with either a burnt offering or a peace offering. And I guess depending on what animal you would have like a bull or a lamb or whatever. And so you would have, certain numbers for the different things that you would offer. Yeah, certain number of grains, how much they weigh or whatever. Yeah, or how much wine you could have or whatever. Just all of these different rules. So some of the different measurements of grain, like if you offer up a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah, or 1/4 of a wine as a drink that you shall prepare with the burnt offering or the sacrifice for each lamb. So I guess if you're sacrificing with the lamb, but if you're doing a ram, you would have the 2/10 of an ephah of flour or 1/3 of a hin of oil as a drink offering, and 1/3 of a hin of wine as a sweet aroma to the Lord. Or if you were offering up a young bull, then you would have 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, with the half a hin of oil, and then you would have an offering of half a hin of wine as an offering made by fire, sweet aroma to the Lord. So how much would be, an ephah or a hin, these different measurements here. So measurements basically equal 4 to 6 gallons and 6 to 8 pints. So I guess the ephah would be 4 to 6 gallons, and then the hin would be 6 to 8 pints. So if you're offering like 1/3 of a hin of oil, so maybe that would be about 2 pints. Yeah, 1/3, yeah, so probably. Or if you were offering, I guess, maybe with the ephah, 1/10 of an ephah. And I guess if an ephah is like 4 to 6 gallons, so I guess 1/10, so I guess that would be 0.4 gallons or something. Yeah, or 0.6 if it was 1/10, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if the math is right, but I just tried my best here with the notes. But anyway. But depending on what you were offering as a burnt offering or peace offering, It would depend on how much you would offer up flour and wine with your grain and drink offerings, basically. All right, and then verses 17 through 21, for the people of Israel, when they come into the land, Moses said, "You shall offer up a cake of your first ground meal as a heave offering of the threshing floor. You shall offer it up, and of the first of your ground meal you shall give to the Lord a heave offering throughout your generations." So this regulation, it pertained to offering of the first fruits of the harvest. And when the people entered the land of Canaan and began to enjoy its produce, they were to show their devotion to the Lord by presenting to him a cake baked from the first cuttings of the grain. Okay. And then, of course, Jesus is the first fruit, ultimately. Yeah, he was the firstborn of the dead, first raised from the dead. So maybe that's, some way of pointing to him. And, of course, Jesus is the sweet aroma to the Lord because his sacrifice paid for sin once and for all. So there you go. All right, now you get to some laws talking about sinning unintentionally. So verses 22 through 29. So if you sin unintentionally and do not observe all these commandments which the Lord has spoken to Moses, all that the Lord has commanded you by the hand of Moses from the day the Lord gave commandment and onward throughout your generations, then it will be, if it is unintentionally committed, without knowledge of the congregation, that the whole congregation shall offer up one young bull as a burnt offering, as a sweet aroma to the Lord, with its grain offering and its drink offering according to the ordinance, and one kid of the goats as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the whole congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them, for it was unintentional. They shall bring their offering, an offering made by fire to the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord for their unintended sin. And it shall be forgiven the whole congregation of the children of Israel and the stranger who dwells among them, because all the people did it unintentionally. And if a person sins unintentionally, then he shall bring a female goat in its first year as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the person who sins unintentionally, when he sins unintentionally before the Lord, to make atonement for him, and it shall be given him. And you shall have one law for him who sins unintentionally, for him who is native born among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who dwells among them. So basically, the sin offerings were prescribed whenever any of the Lord's commands were unwittingly disobeyed, basically by unintentional neglect or omission. Yeah, when maybe you know you should have done something and yet you didn't do it. Yeah, which is what James 4:17 says. Let me turn there. It's a little bonus. I might read the note on this. Getting there. Getting there. There you go. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. So sins of omission, basically it's, doing what you should do and yet you don't do it. Yeah, but of course, sins of commission would be, sins of commission, you don't do, omission, maybe you don't do what you should do, but then commission, you end up not doing what you should do. So there you go. Yeah, so here this would be like unintentionally. Yeah, or by omission. where you don't do what you should have done, and how to deal with that in the Old Testament. So in verses 24 through 26, the offerings for the whole community were given. But in 27 through 29, the offerings for the individual person who sinned unintentionally were stated. So basically, the first few verses, the first few verses, if sin is committed without knowledge of the congregation of the people, and then you got those rules there, offering up, one young bull as a burnt offering, and then of course the grain offering and drink offering according to the ordinance. Yep, and one kid of the goats as a sin offering. Yep, and then if it's just a person who sins unintentionally, then that person will offer up a female goat. Alright. And now you get to verses 30 through 31. Law concerning presumptuous sin. But the person who does anything presumptuously, whether he is native born or a stranger, that one brings reproach on the Lord, and he shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of the Lord and has broken his commandment. That person shall be completely cut off. His guilt shall be upon him. So, a person does something presumptuously, anything presumptuously, literally with a high hand. Basically, somebody who commits a sin knowingly and deliberately. Yeah, and they're described as blasphemous because they were an arrogant act of insubordination against the Lord. And anyone guilty of presumptuous sin was to be excommunicated from Israel and be put to death. Yeah, basically deliberately sinning against the Lord. Yeah, that person would be cut off. Yeah. Or should be. Alright, penalty for violating the Sabbath. Alright, verses 32 through 36. Now while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. And they put him under guard, because it had not been explained what should be done to him. And then the Lord said to Moses, "This man must surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." And so as the Lord commanded Moses, all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died. So basically this is an illustration of the defiant sin. Yeah, so this is an example of somebody like deliberately sinning. Yeah. And when it was determined that there was a premeditated violation of the Sabbath law, death was required. And they put him to death outside the camp. Yeah. And of course Jesus was accused of violating the Sabbath by the leaders in his day. Yeah, but he didn't. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. He obeyed the Sabbath. Yeah, well, he's the Sabbath. We rest in him. Yeah. And, of course, he was put to death outside the camp. Outside of Jerusalem, ultimately. Even though he was innocent. But anyway. So, but he wasn't stoned, he was crucified. So. Alright, and then you get to tassels on garments. And this is the final part of chapter 15. Again, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in their tassels of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, that you may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, and that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined, and that you may remember and do all of my commandments, and be holy for your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. So in this section, what you got is that the people of Israel are told to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put blue thread in their tassels of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, and that you may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, to do them. So the blue tassels were in the form of a flower or a petal, and they were attached to the garments of the Israelites to remind them of their need to trust the Lord and obey his commandments. Yeah, that way they would not follow their harlotry, to which their own heart, our own hearts and eyes are inclined. Yeah, to be sinning and following after other gods. Yeah. But I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Yeah, to be your God. I am the Lord your God. Alright, well, that's actually the end of chapter 15. And that reminder at the end, it harkens back to Moses' first encounter with the Lord in the desert in Exodus 3. He is the Lord. Yep. And also with this talk of making tassels on the corners of their garments throughout generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of their corners, to look upon it and remember the commandments. Well, it kind of makes me think of something similar, I think, in the New Testament, real quick. I think in Matthew 23, there's something about this. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, and whenever Jesus is calling out the scribes and the Pharisees, in verse 5 he says, all the works that they do it in order to be seen by men. And they make their phylacteries broad and enlarge the borders of their garments. So basically these phylacteries, they were leather boxes that contained parchment on which was written 4 columns of Exodus 13, verses 1 through 10, and then 11 through 16, and then Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9, and also Deuteronomy 11, 13 through 21. And these were worn by men during prayer. And one on the middle of the forehead, and one on the left arm above the elbow. And the use of these phylacteries, they were based on an overly literal interpretation of those passages. And evidently, the Pharisees would broaden their leather straps by which those phylacteries were bound to their arms and foreheads in order to make those phylacteries more prominent. And also they would broaden the borders of their garments, and enlarge the borders of their garments, like their tassels. So tassels. And Jesus himself wore them. So it was not the tassels themselves that they condemned, only the mentality that they would lengthen their tassels in order to make it appear that one was especially spiritual. So it's probably this could be like tassels that were commanded there in Numbers 15. Basically to remind the people to trust God and obey his commandments. But here it looks like it's, you know, enlarging them, just to give the appearance that these people were really spiritual. So really what Jesus is condemning here, along with other things, but right here he's condemning that mentality to basically make yourself look spiritual in front of everybody else. Yep, but no, Jesus was not fooled by that. He called them hypocrites, and they looked good on the outside, but they were dead on the inside, dirty on the inside. All right. Yeah, but when I saw that tassels part at the end of the Numbers 15, it kind of made me think maybe I've seen something like that before. So I guess it was there. Okay. Yeah, obey God, obviously. Yeah, but don't be showing off, I guess you could say, like the Pharisees were. Well, really, they didn't obey God. They rejected him. Well, that's pretty much it in Numbers 15 again. And I'll see what Prager has to say next time, Lord willing. But until then, may God bless you, and the grace and mercy won by Jesus, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all.